This is what I look like when I have not shaved my face for more than 4 days. I was hugely proven wrong about my game prediction because Tennessee Volunteers did not defeat the Georgia Bulldogs 31-27 because the Georgia Bulldogs steamrolled the Tennessee Volunteers 44-21 in a game that became an embarrassment, an utter embarrassment in the second half. Because the Georgia Bulldogs, they outscored the Tennessee Volunteers 27-0 or 0 in the second half, and it was one of the worst ever meltdowns I've seen for a Tennessee Volunteers team that actually has talent to defeat a great Georgia Bulldogs team or other great teams if they execute and play a full great game, not just for the first half, second half. Because they played a great first half, they played a terrible second half. I was hugely wrong also about the Tennessee Volunteers would play a full great game. They didn't play a full great game. They played a great first half. They didn't play a great second half. They played a terrible second half. They played a great first half. They played a terrible second half, which is exactly why they lost 44-21 and got outscored by a great Georgia Bulldogs team 27-0 and lost the turnover battle by more than one. I was hugely wrong. I was also wrong about the Tennessee Volunteers would win this turnover battle by 1 because they lost it by more than 2. I know they lost it by more than 1. And so they won that turnover battle. I said the Tennessee Volunteers would be able to run the football so that Garantano, for most of the game, he would not have to defeat the Bulldogs by throwing the football for most of the game. And I was wrong. I was very hugely wrong about that because after great adjustments, because the Tennessee Volunteers needed to run the football successfully in the second half so that Garantano didn't have to beat the Georgia Bulldogs. He did have to beat them by throwing, and he wasn't able to do that, which is exactly why he threw an interception. He wasn't protecting the football. Georgia Bulldogs were pressuring him, creating fumbles, and recovering those fumbles. And they took advantage from those points, scoring double-digit points from those turnovers. So the Tennessee Volunteers were not able to successfully run the football, so that Garantano wouldn't have to throw for because he did have to throw for most of the second half, and he wasn't able to do that successfully. I was wrong about the Tennessee Volunteers making more great plays than the Georgia Bulldogs because the Georgia Bulldogs made more great plays than the Tennessee Volunteers, including for the entire second half, which again is also another primary reason why the Georgia Bulldogs won 44-21 and outscored them 27-0. I was also hugely wrong about Pruitt and Garantano, the Volunteers quarterback, both Volunteers head coach and the Volunteers starting quarterback, both of them getting their great signature wins in Georgia because the Georgia Bulldogs ended up winning 40 because the Georgia Bulldogs won the game. I'm not going to repeat the score again. And Tennessee Volunteers did not make that great statement by defeating a great Georgia Bulldogs team in Georgia. That didn't happen because Georgia Bulldogs demolished or steamrolled the Volunteers in Georgia. And trying to think what other details about my game prediction. I've already talked about the great plays, the turnovers, the running, the great signature win, making a statement. Oh, yeah, I was wrong about Garantano running for a touchdown because he ran for 0 touchdowns. And the whole Garantano shows he's a great quarterback. Well, he looked like that because he was playing highly effective in the first half, including throwing 2 long passes, both of them that were touchdowns, except he was not able to do that or get even close to doing that in the second half. And so I was hugely wrong. It was 3-point. Tennessee Volunteers scored. They were 10 points away from what I had them predict them scoring. The Bulldogs, they scored 17 more points than what I predicted them to score of 27. the 27 points I had them scoring, and the Georgia Bulldogs end up covering the spread. So this was an astronomical disappointment. I know the Tennessee Volunteers are not the great team that's in that same league with Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, etc. I know, and I would imagine Ohio State is still in that great league. They are not. Tennessee Volunteers, 2020 Tennessee Volunteers are not in that great league. I know that. Except it's not unreasonable. It's not unreachable that the Tennessee Volunteers, when I predicted them that they would win, this game if they played a full great game, because they were proving me right, and because they have that capability. They just need to put it together for a full 60 minutes, and they put it together for the first half. They didn't finish in the second half, which is why this was an astronomical disappointment, because they were beating the Bulldogs in the first half. Yeah, they were giving up big chunks of plays, but when that defense had to defend, they did. Bennett did not even get close to a first down when he had to run for it on 4th and 1. He thought he could be Tebow. He was not even close to being Tebow. He didn't even get close to getting that first. The Volunteers defense ran to him like they had the speed, like they had speed of Huskies, and freaking he was not even challenging him at all. Like, no, I'm still gonna move like I'm Henry. I'm still gonna move like I'm Henry or Tebow, and I'm still gonna get that first. He didn't even get close to that. And then 1st and goal, Georgia Bulldogs can't score. 2nd and goal, Georgia Bulldogs can't score. 3rd and goal, Georgia Bulldogs can't. 4th and goal, Georgia Bulldogs do not score that touchdown. Volunteers defense has that amazing goal line stand. And now I know that there's an entire second half and anything couldn't go wrong, but I was still amazed by how that first half ended. I did not see that ending that way. I was still fearful that the Bulldogs on that 4th and goal that they would be able to score, or because I could see that they weren't going to go with how close they were, that they were going to go for it instead of just play the safe option and just kick a field goal. Because even if they didn't score points, they still had the capability of coming back, because they were only losing by 4 with with an entire second half to play, and great second halftime adjustments they can use. So that's why it was astronomically disappointing, because they have the capability, they have the arsenal to outplay the Georgia Bulldogs and defeat a great Georgia Bulldogs team. So they only did that for the first half. They did not do that at all for the second half, which is exactly why they got outscored 27-0 and lost by the score that you know of. I mean, that was like the worst ever meltdown I've seen. I'm not going to count for any bad or terrible or underachieving Volunteers team, because they just didn't have the arsenal. Any Volunteers team that just has the talent, like multiple talented players on both offense and defense, to be a team that wins more than 7 games, and they didn't finish, including, I can recall that 2015 team when they melted it down against Oklahoma. I mean, yeah, that was terrible. They didn't finish. Except I would say that this was just vastly worse, because this was a Tennessee Volunteers team. I would call them, they're a middleweight. They're not a heavyweight, but they're still a middleweight. They ran they ran the entire distance with the Georgia Bulldogs in that first half. They gave me optimism. Cautious optimism that they were going to prove my prediction right of playing a full great game. They did that for the first half, winning 21-17, including Garantano throwing 2 great long passes for touchdowns, showing like maybe he was inspired by Dobbs, Newton, etc. It's like, I am not going to play conservative. I am going to throw the long passes, and I am going to get noticed. Well, he did get noticed. 2 great passes. So that's what just makes it hugely disappointing in the second half, because no doubt they knew that they were going to most likely have to run this football, because he's not going to have that constantly after the Georgia Bulldogs make those most likely great second halftime adjustments. They weren't able to run that football. They were not able to protect the football. Anything that could go wrong, including Garantano, Volunteers not protecting the football, mainly because of Garantano. He found a way to melt down, which was very frustrating, because he knew exactly what he had to do, at least give the Volunteers, be that game manager, give the Volunteers a great chance to win. And he was doing that in the first half, except then the second half is like, well, we know exactly what Garantano if he has to be the guy that beats us, he cannot be a Newton. He cannot be Cam Newton. He cannot be a Tim Tebow. And they showed that because he mostly had to defeat them with great throws in the second half, and he wasn't able to do that. So that's what makes it astronomically disappointing, because this was like Georgia Bulldogs had an 88% chance of winning this FPI chance of winning this football game, and they were not doing that for the first. They weren't doing that for the first half. The Volunteers, they had a lot of heavy lifting, except they were still winning 21-17 in the first half. Pretty much, they were doing mostly everything right, which is a primary reason why they were winning 21-17. And then the second half, anything that could go wrong did go wrong. Georgia Bulldogs completely outplayed them in the second half. They won the turnover battle. They effectively executed on offense. They took advantage of those turnovers. They created turnovers. The defense hugely contained. Volunteers did not have any big plays. And then when you could see that the Volunteers had, if any, big plays, they were already winning 44-21. It was garbage time. So they didn't give up any big plays when the Volunteers had like a reachable chance of winning. And then when it became like, okay, they don't have a reach, there's still a chance, maybe possibly they could come back. They're going to have to do heavy lifting because they're down by 16. Get a touchdown, get a 2-point conversion, get a touch. That's still challenging, except that's still slightly that's less challenging than being down 44-21, where they're not built to come back from that. So that's what just makes it hugely disappointing. The Tennessee Volunteers, it's like they're gonna give me. They gave me that fool's gold of they played that great first half. They gave me cautious optimism that they were gonna effectively execute my game prediction of playing a full great game. So then they play a terrible second half. The Georgia Bulldogs play a great second half after what I'd only call a good first half, because they still moved the football. They scored 7. They scored another 7. They scored a field goal, and they moved the football. Yet they didn't get in on first, second, third, and fourth and goal, except they still moved the football. And this was all after that embarrassment of that huge snap that went above, that looked like it was something from that Super Bowl of Seahawks-Broncos, and Tennessee Volunteers easily able to recover that. A Volunteer defender was easily able to recover that football in the end zone. So the Georgia Bulldogs, that's why I said they played a good first half. Even though they weren't able to get in on those 4 tries, they were still only losing by 4 points. So they still had a huge, very reachable chance of coming back in the second half, and they did. And this is also 34 consecutive games that the Tennessee Volunteers have lost to AP top 10 teams. This was like their most, of all the games they've lost in that 34, I would put this as most, mainly because 88%, I was really expecting that they would show that this would be a David versus Goliath game, where they went as far as the FPI shows, because of what the FPI, and because of this is a middleweight boxing a heavyweight, and they were going a long distance. They went the entire distance of the first 6 rounds. In the final 6 rounds, they were completely outboxed, metaphorically speaking, which makes this a complete disappointment. It's like the Tennessee Volunteers got inspired by that speech in Miracle. We shut them down. We outplay them because we shut in the Disney movie Miracle, like we shut them down and defeat them because we can. Well, that's what they believed. That's what they were showing for the first half, and they did not show that for the second half, which makes this astronomically disappointing. The most disappointing I've seen for any Volunteers team for a second half meltdown. Even more than that Oregon Ducks one, because that Oregon Ducks team had a great offense that can score more than 31 points. So in that 2010 Volunteers, okay, they're a good team. I wouldn't call them that great team. They're not that great team in that same league of the 2010 Auburn Tigers. So, that was still disappointing because they were outplaying a Oregon Ducks team that got to the national title game, national championship game, except that. I mean, it wasn't that unexpected that they would be able to not sustain it, mainly because they would have needed one of the greatest games of all games to defeat that kind of Oregon Ducks team. So that was huge. So it's even more disappointing than that in any other Volunteers talented team where they just melted down the second half. I'm talking, when I say talented, they have talented players both on offense and defense, and they have that capability to actually beat a heavyweight Georgia, Florida, including the Tebow, Florida, Alabama, any Saban Alabama team, because they've consistently always been a heavyweight since Saban's taken over, etc. So yeah, this is the most. It was. I didn't stop watching because it was like The Room. I was like, I'm gonna continue to watching because see how much worse. As frustrating it is, I'm just gonna continue to see how much worse it is, but also because there was still. I mean, yeah, my optimism was diminishing with each turnover after turnover. Except I was still optimistic going to that they'd become able to come back. And then, of course, Georgia gets up by 16 points. I'm like, okay, now it's going to be. I mean, now my optimism is almost completely gone because, I mean, it's very challenging including against a great defense, to move the football, score a touchdown, get a 2-point conversion, score a touchdown, get a 2-point conversion. That would have been like that's a high wall to climb. Not saying it's like insurmountable, except that's highly challenging, including when you're playing a great team that has a great defense, which the Georgia Bulldogs do have. And then all my optimism just completely was removed when that fumble happened and exactly where the Georgia Bulldogs wanted it. A Bulldog defender picks up the football and easily runs into the end zone. Like, I'm watching one of the greatest defenses the Georgia Bulldogs defenses have ever had, right up there with any opportunistic defense that other college football teams from the past have had. So I'm still optimistic I was expecting that the Volunteers would be able to get me an early birthday gift and get that great signature win in this 33 games losing streak to AB top 10 teams, except that didn't happen, so it's extended to 34, my age, which is 34. And that's everything I can think of. I'm not going to say that the sky's falling. I'm not going to say, man, this team just stinks and they're not going to recover and they're not going to be able to have that great season of like 7-8 wins and one great signature. I'm still going to be optimistic because this is one game. They played a great Bulldogs team. They played an entire what I would call a great first half because they were winning 27. I mean, I know they got that whole huge gift from those 7 points. So Garantano still did make 2 great throws. The defense was showing the capability of what they're capable of in the first half, including, nope, not going to get that. Didn't get it on that 4th and 1 play where Bennett was running for a touchdown thinking he's going to be Tebow. Didn't even get close, and the goal line stand. Again, the Volunteers are capable of playing great to defeat a great team, except they have to put it together for both play a full great game. Because if you only play one great half against a great team, then that great team most likely is going to, after great second halftime adjustments, is most likely to win because they use those great second halftime adjustments and have a great second half. So I'm still optimistic that the 2020 Volunteers can win 7, possibly 8 games and get that one great signature win, which could be against Alabama. I'm not going to say it's against Florida Gators, mainly because they lost to the Texas A&M Aggies, and the South Carolina Gamecocks came back. So it's not like I'm looking at the Florida Gators great team that I'd put in the same league as the Tebow Gators. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to be a lightweight or this is going to be an easy win, but I can't say that that's going to be it will be a signature win as far as like comp, because that's Tennessee's main rival. But I'm not going to say that that's like their great signature win. Like if they had in the same league of defeating a Georgia, defeating a Alabama, or assuming that Auburn goes into the top 10, defeating a great Auburn Tigers team. I mean, it's still going to be but not that great signature win. But still a signature win, but I'm confident the Tennessee Volunteers are going to get a great signature win, which could be against the Auburn Tigers, or maybe they've like being so pissed off that they didn't finish against the Alabama Crimson Tide. Like, let's put it together for freaking 60 minutes, hit Alabama repeatedly, and freaking defeat that damn bully, that damn juggernaut Crimson Tide by playing a full great game in Rocky Top and defeating the damn Saban Crimson Tide for the first time ever for the Volunteers, because they've never defeated the Nick Saban juggernaut Crimson Tide since he took over as the head coach of the Crimson Tide. So that's why I'm still optimistic, and Versity reveals character, and I'm expecting Garantano. I didn't get any news about Garantano quit, and isn't the first time he's had adversity. So I'm really, along with the Volunteers team, they're having adversity. So I'm really interested to see how they respond. I mean, mainly for the rest of the season, including against Kentucky, where a game I'm expecting them to win. And for the other challenging games they have left, which are mainly Auburn, Alabama, and still challenging Florida, because they're usually never an easy win. It's always usually a competitive, great game against their main rival of the SEC East. So, yeah, I'm still optimistic the Volunteers are still going to have that great season, which I would say is 7 wins, 8 wins, and that one great signature win against a top 10 team, which possibly could be the Auburn Tigers, if not the Crimson Tide, or maybe a top 10 to 20 team of the Auburn Tigers. If they are I would expect that they would still be 10, or they would not be ranked below 20, that they would be in the top 15. So hoping the Auburn Tigers move into the top 10, so the Tennessee Volunteers, if they don't defeat a juggernaut Crimson Tide team, they still have another opportunity by going on the road and defeating a great Auburn Tigers team that highly possibly could be in the top 10. So, yeah, I'm still optimistic for the Rocky Top 2020 Rocky Top Volunteers. And also, I can say about the defense, if the defense isn't having to be on the field for so much amount of time because the Volunteers' offense is actually protecting the football, they can be great. So, again, other reasons why I'm optimistic, even from this very colossal, astronomical disappointment with this harrowing, the worst ever second half meltdown I've seen for any talented Volunteers football team. That's why I'm still optimistic. The defense can be great if they're actually having time to rest instead of the Volunteers. Mainly, I gotta say like it is, Garantano is making not protecting the football, and the defense is taking advantage by recovering the fumbles or intercepting the football. So, yeah, that's why I'm still optimistic. And also, if take information from this game, be like, okay, this is what happened wrong in the second half. This is what we have to do in order to play a full great game. So, confident that Tennessee Volunteers, even though it's very frustrating, they're still going to benefit from this harrowing and embarrassing defeat by showing this is how we play a great full game, including this is how we're able to not just protecting the football, effectively defending, playing 2 full great halves, not just one great, playing a full great game instead of just one great first half, and then play a full great game. This is how you play a full great game, and this is, you got to make great second halftime adjustments and effectively run the football in the first half. So most likely you don't have to get that going in the second half. Possibly more likely to win. And etc. So really very still optimistic about the 2020 Volunteers, and I've already posted on multiple videos I posted for my game prediction being wrong. So I've already eaten crow, not just for this video, also for posting those comments on since my detailed prediction about the Tennessee Volunteers defeating the Georgia Bulldogs was hugely proven wrong, I posted that on multiple Tennessee Volunteers Georgia Bulldogs game prediction videos, including on Uncle Lou's channel on his Tennessee Volunteers Georgia Bulldogs game preview video.